Falana to DSS. Transfer Emefiele to Efcc for investigation. Don't bungle the case. Wow. So Falana has started warning DSS. I think it's an early observation before the DSS will take law into their hands the way they did in the case of Kano, Nnamdi Kano's case. If you leave DSS, they will take law into their hands and think they are Alpha and Omega, and then they begin to act as if they are judiciary. Okay, so if they have arrested Emefiele, let them transfer him to EFCC custody for investigation, and then the whatever that is following will continue from there. So that is what Falana is telling DSS now. Let's see. Okay. So Femi Falana, a senior advocate of Nigeria, says the Department of State Services (DSS) should transfer Godwin Emefiele to the custody of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC) for further investigation. Actually, on Friday, Bola Tinubu suspended Emefiele and asked him to transfer his responsibilities to Folashodu Adebisi Shonubi, Deputy Governor Operations Directorate. And then on Saturday, barely 24 hours afterwards, the Department of State Services (DSS) announced that Emefiele was in his custody for some investigative reasons. Emefiele has been on the radar of the DSS since 2022 over alleged terrorism financing. Now, wow. The security agency had sought an arrest warrant from Federal High Court, but the application was declined on the grounds that there was no evidence to back the claim. A Federal Capital Territory High Court later issued an order restraining the DSS from arresting Emefiele. I think all of these were in 2022, still around when he was beginning to implement the Naira redesign policy. In a statement on Sunday, Falana advised DSS on how not to bungle the case on legal technicalities. The Sun said DSS lacks the power to investigate and prosecute Emefiele in respect of allegations of money laundering and other economic crimes. He added that Emefiele should, in turn, be handed over to the agency with the constitutional power to investigate such a case. A few months ago, the State Security Services leveled grave allegations of terrorism financing, money laundering, and other economic crimes against Mr. Godwin Emefiele, the governor of Central Bank of Nigeria. At the material time, the attempt by the SSS to arrest, investigate, and prosecute Mr. Emefiele was frustrated by the erstwhile Buhari administration, Falana wrote. However, following the suspension of Mr. Emefiele as the governor of the CBN by President Bola Tinubu, the SSS squeezed him in Lagos and flew him to Abuja yesterday. Yeah. And according to media reports, the investigation of the suspect by the SSS has commenced, even though the SSS, which initially denied the arrest, has since turned around to admit that Mr. Emefiele is in his custody. In the case of Dr. Bukola Saraki versus Federal Republic of Nigeria 2018, 16 NWR Part 1646, 433-434, the Supreme Court ruled that the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission lacks the vials to investigate and prosecute the appellant for the breach of the provisions of Code of Conduct Bureau and Tribunal Act. It was for that principal reason that Senator Saraki was freed by the Apex Court. In line with the principle of law enunciated by the Apex Court in Saraki's case, the SSS lacks the power to investigate and prosecute Mr. Emefiele in respect of allegations of money laundering and other economic crimes. Therefore, after investigating the alleged involvement of Mr. Emefiele in terrorism financing, the SSS should transfer him to the EFCC for the purpose of investigating the allegations of money laundering and failed allied offenses Otherwise, the investigation of the case will be bungled by the SSS. Now, wow. So this is more like, heads up and early instruction and observation coming from Falana to let the DSS and the SSS know that there's a limit to which they can handle Emefiele's case. Since last year, they tried to level a case against him on terrorism financing, and now then they tried to arrest him, but it did not work. It did not work because they lacked the power to do that at that time. But now they have arrested him, and now what Falana is saying is that let them handle the part of terrorism quickly, and then hand him over to Efcc for the part of funding and the part of money laundering issues, and not to bungle everything within their own domain. Now the question I have is when they said they know all the people behind terrorism and behind Boko Haram in Nigeria, just because the Dubai government threatened to publish some names. Since then, we've not heard anything again from federal government. So is it now they know that the Emefiele is supporting terrorism? And if Emefiele is supporting terrorism, who and who is he working with? Is he just to do that alone, just to destabilize Nigerian government or Nigeria as a nation? These guys are very funny. They have used the Emefiele and they are dumping him straight up. That is just what I say here. Because whatever Emefiele did from 2014 that he came to power under Goodluck Jonathan till now, I tell you, he has worked them under the instruction of Buhari. And Buhari must be answerable to so many things if Emefiele is to be really be prosecuted for financing terrorism. Because we all know that all those terrorists came through the northern end of Nigeria. Yes, especially ISWAP that came from Mali and some other Islamic West African countries. Okay, or Boko Haram that started from Borno State, even under the nose of Shetima, the current vice president of Nigeria. So what I will say, so is it Emefiele that sponsored and brought them to Nigeria for what purpose? So all of that will come out. DSS is just doing Chagragra. They can't touch any Emefiele because Emefiele will spill the beans and all of them will be stained and they will smell. That is the truth. And already Buhari is already saying that nobody should call him for evidence in court. I'm sure he's already getting scared because his immunity is over. Okay, so let them just be very, very careful with what they're doing, because at the end of the day, they'll find out that they will spill the rubbish that will mess both past and present government officials. But again, this is a lesson to a lot of certain politicians and people who are holding key offices, that these northern group that are desperate to continue to rule Nigeria will do anything to get to power. We know that Buhari over some years tried to contest to become president. It didn't work for him until Tinubu had to support him in 2015, and then he won the election. Okay, and it was the same certain politicians that sustained that government from that 2015 to now that the man just left office. Unfortunately, when Buhari got into office, he started nepotism and tribalism there and was one-sided in his political appointment appointing his people from Daura, Katsina State, and from northern part of Nigeria. The Southerners did not hold key offices throughout his tenure, apart from those few ones that were, causing problem here and there, like what is his name, FFK and Festus Keyamu. Those are the people that decided to do dirty work for him. And what is his name? The governor of Imo State and the governor of Bonny State. Those are the people that were doing dirty work for him. And now he's dumping them because there's no hope that they will have any political appointment. So Emefiele is one of those people I think the northern oligarchy has used, and now he's useless, and they want to dump him, and they want to dump him on a very miserable ground, and that is not good for us in Nigeria. Not Southern politicians should learn lesson. Okay, after supporting the North for so many years, this is how Emefiele is going to go in for it, even though his hands obviously will not be clean because he must have also benefited from all the support that he gave to senior politicians and the northern part of Nigeria to actualize their aim. That what goes around comes around sometimes. But the fact remains that you don't need to work with dirty people. If you cannot work, if you identify that their intentions are not genuine, you leave them and not to endure the rubbish and continue to be there, because one day some things will fall back on you. So thank you for listening, and let's start the comment.